So if you think there are only two healthy ways to eat, vegan or carnivore, well, your body actually disagrees quite strongly. And yes, I realize this puts me right in the middle of the nutritional battle. I can feel the arrows already. But that's actually the safest place to stand if you care about biology. So hi everyone and welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is George. I'm a biological scientist and I started this channel to document my own GLP-1 journey. Sometimes a journey, sometimes more like an adventure. And to share what I'm learning along the way. And this channel is really about metabolic health, especially as we age. So I talk about the science, the biology, the wins, the struggles, and the practical things that actually move the needle. And yes, for those of you on GLP-1s, this conversation matters even more because appetite quiets down, but biology doesn't disappear. So most weeks I will publish educational deep dives, just like this one, because good decisions come from understanding the big picture, not picking a tribe. And this episode came from something I see constantly, online, in the comments, and honestly in real life. Nutrition apparently has become tribal. On the one side, vegans and vegetarians. On the other side, carnivore and ketogenic enthusiasts. And if you spend enough time there, you think there are only two options. Plants save you. Meat saves you. And apparently everyone else is just doing it wrong. So today I'm stepping out of the food fight, even if I'm standing right in the crossfire, and stepping into human physiology, because your body already answered this debate long before social media did. Okay, let's start with something refreshingly non-emotional. Anatomy. Your digestive system is kind of a record, a window into how the human body is put together to handle food. So look at your teeth. We have teeth for tearing and teeth for grinding. Well, that combination doesn't fit strict herbivory, and it doesn't fit strict carnivore either. Now look at stomach acid. Human stomach acid is far stronger than of most herbivores. Well, that's a clue. It tells us we're equipped to digest animal protein and manage microbial exposure. But then look at the length of our intestines. They're longer than carnivores, shorter than herbivores. Now that middle placement is not accidental. The human body wasn't designed to depend on one narrow food stream. It's built for adaptability. Different seasons, different environments, times of abundance, times of scarcity. Our gut reflects flexibility, not ideology. Okay, now let's talk about protein, because this is where the conversation usually gets loud. And so here's the calm physiological reality. The human body handles animal protein very efficiently. We have the stomach acidity, we have the enzymes, we break protein down well, and we absorb essential amino acids very effectively. And that tells us something important. We are equipped to eat animal foods. And here's the distinction that often gets missed. Being equipped is not the same thing as being dependent. Humans require essential amino acids. They must come from the diet, but not necessarily from one specific food source. And that's why well-planned vegetarian diets can meet protein needs. And it's also why poorly planned ones often don't. On the other side, very low carb and carnivore approaches often feel remarkably good at first. And there are many reasons for that. They simplify eating, they remove ultra-processed foods, they stabilize blood sugar, they reduce appetite noise. Those benefits are real. But again, many of those benefits come from what's removed, not from the diet being the only way humans can thrive. So don't get me wrong, protein matters. Protein quality matters. Protein adequacy matters. But physiology points us towards flexibility, not absolutism. And now let's talk about plants, because they're often reduced to one word, carbs. But plants do far more than provide energy. They provide information. One of the most important contributions plants make is fiber. Fiber isn't digested by us. It's worked on by our gut microbiome, about, your 39 billion little guys down in your colon and in your intestines. And that matters because a healthy gut supports immune regulation, metabolic signaling, and increasingly clear brain health. You've heard about the brain-gut axis. Now, there's constant communication between the gut and the brain. There are hormones, neurotransmitters, inflammatory signals, and when the gut environment is supported, those signals tend to be calmer, more regulated. Well, that doesn't mean more fiber is always better. Some people, especially those with gut disorders, autoimmune conditions, or severe insulin resistance, they do not tolerate high fiber loads at all. Not very well at all. And that matters. But for many people, adequate, well-chosen fiber supports long-term health in ways no supplement can fully replace. For instance, plants provide micronutrients that we don't manufacture ourselves. Things like magnesium for insulin signaling, potassium for vascular health, folate for cell turnover, and vitamin K for metabolic and cardiovascular regulation. And they also provide polyphenols. These are bioactive compounds that help regulate inflammation, support endothelial function, and influence how genes involved in metabolism are actually expressed. So polyphenols don't act like drugs. They modulate, they nudge systems towards balance. So again, this isn't about forcing plants. It's about recognizing what they uniquely contribute when they're tolerated. Physiology rewards appropriate inclusion, not rigid exclusion. So at this point, it's fair to ask an honest question. If humans are built for flexibility, why do extreme diets sometimes work so well? And the answer is simple, because they often solve a real problem. Now, very low-carb ketogenic and carnivore approaches can dramatically improve, remember, blood sugar, insulin resistance, and inflammatory symptoms for some people. They're not imagined. That's physiology. These diets do a few powerful things. As we talked about, they simplify food choices, they eliminate ultra-processed foods, they stabilize glucose and insulin, and they reduce appetite noise. For someone who's metabolically unwell, that can feel like turning down the volume of a system that's been screaming at them. Plant-exclusive approaches, on the other hand, can also be therapeutic. They can lower calorie density, increase fiber intake, improve lipid markers. And for some people, they align with ethical, philosophical, and spiritual commitments. For some, that structure is exactly what brings consistency. So when someone says, "This diet changed my life," I take that seriously. And I also want to say this clearly. There are people, especially those with autoimmune conditions, severe gut disorders, or genetically influenced sensitivities, for whom staying on very restrictive diets is not a preference, but a matter of stability or even survival, and that deserves respect. Where nuance matters is in how we talk about these diets more broadly. Many of their benefits come from what's removed, not necessarily from what must be excluded forever by everyone. Extreme diets can be excellent interventions, especially during periods of healing, of metabolic reset or symptom control. But they often come with long-term trade-offs, with nutrient gaps, with microbiome narrowing, reduced adaptability, social and psychological strain. That doesn't make them wrong. It means they're tools, not universal templates. The mistake isn't picking up a tool. The mistake is forgetting why you picked it up and never reassessing. Physiology cares about context, timing, and sustainability, not dietary identity. All right, so this is usually the point where I have to be a little careful not to get into the weeds. My master's degree was in conservation biology with a heavy emphasis on genetics. So if I start sounding a little too enthusiastic, well, now you know why. But the big picture here is actually simple. Our genes gives us clues about how the human body is equipped to handle food, for one example. There's a gene called AMY1. Now this gene controls salivary amylase. This is the enzyme that starts breaking down starch in your mouth. And humans don't just have this enzyme. Many of us have multiple copies of this gene. And populations with long histories of starch consumption tend to have more copies. That tells us we're equipped to handle plant carbohydrates at least to some degree. And then there are genes called FADS1 and FADS2. And these help convert plant-based fatty acids into longer chain fats that the body can use. And these pathways become especially important when animal fats are limited. Again, that's flexibility built in. And on the animal food side, there's lactase persistence. And this is the ability to digest dairy into adulthood. Not everyone has it, but where dairy mattered, the capacity to use it was retained. So the pattern is clear. Humans weren't built for one perfect diet. We're built with options. And that's exactly what you would expect in a body designed to function across different environments and cultures and conditions. So when we talk about the middle of the bell curve, this isn't just a theory for me, it's personal. I grew up in Greece, and for much of my childhood, our protein didn't come from large portions of meat. It came from whole grains, legumes, beans, lentils, and greens. Spinach, for example. Anyone recognize the word spanakopita? That's spinach pie. And that was protein, just not in the way we talk about it today. Now, even in the city, especially in the early years, we gravitated towards what you might call peasant food. Simple, affordable, available, and meat was a luxury. It showed up on Sundays, on holidays, at celebrations, maybe once or twice a week. And that was not deprivation. That was normal. And the same pattern shows up very clearly in places we now call blue zones. And these are places where science has documented a population of long-lived people in their 90s, often over 100, who are much more healthy all the way to the end. And dementia, for instance, is almost completely absent. And in the country of my birth, there is such a zone, a blue zone. It's a small island called Ikaria, and it's an isolated island. And it's blessed with a favorable climate, with healthy soils, a rich diversity of botanicals, and a culture that's adapted beautifully to what the land could provide. The diet there is not ideological, it's practical. Mostly plants, vegetables, legumes, wild greens, herbs. Olive oil is a staple. We have wine. And meat is not excluded. It's simply less frequent, often shared, often savored, historically limited by access, cost, and culture. And what stands out isn't perfection. It's coherence. Food, movement, community, rest, purpose, all working together. And that's where I naturally gravitate, not because it's trendy, not because it's moralized, but because it fits both physiology and lived experience. It respects flexibility, it allows adaptation, and it leaves room for context, culture, health status, and season of life. Sometimes the middle isn't boring. Sometimes it's where the wisdom sits. So here is my encouragement, especially if you're feeling a little confused or pressured to pick a side. Eat like a human, not a hashtag. So prioritize protein adequacy, metabolic stability, and foods your body actually responds to well. Foods that you like to eat, which taste good. So be adventurous. Be flexible. Be humble enough to adjust. If a diet helped you to heal, honor that. If it helped you simplify, respect that. Just don't assume it's the universal answer for every human body forever. Remember this, your physiology isn't extreme. It's adaptable. And if this conversation was helpful, if it brought some clarity or lowered the noise just a bit, I'd really appreciate if you give this video a like. It does help the channel, and it helps those kinds of thoughtful conversations that we've had here today reach more people. And as always, thank you for spending a few minutes of your life with me. And if you made it to the end, it tells me you're thinking carefully about your health. I respect that. I publish weekly GLP-1 journey updates from my own journey, and usually 1 to 2 educational videos each week where we go deep, but try not to be dogmatic. So stay curious, be patient with your body, and be at peace. This is George with GLP-1s for Seniors, and I will see you next time.